Sign the deed over to your brother. You've always had enough. He needs this more than you do." That was the last thing my mother said to me before I realized she had never seen me as a daughter. Just an asset she could redistribute when it was convenient. I am a paralegal. I've spent 7 years helping other people untangle the legal messes their families left behind: forged signatures, manipulated wills, property transferred under duress. I have sat across from clients who looked hollow-eyed and exhausted and thought, how do you let this happen to yourself? Now I know. You let it happen because you love them, because every time you start to see clearly, someone reminds you of a birthday they remembered, a night they drove you to the ER, a Christmas that felt like a real family. You let it happen because the alternative, accepting that the people who raised you are capable of something this cold, is almost impossible to hold in your mind all at once. My name is Audrey. I am 31 years old. I own, or I thought I owned, a house in Columbus, Ohio that my grandmother left me when she died 4 years ago. Her name was Frances. She called me her serious one. She used to press her palm flat against my cheek when she said it, like she was checking my temperature, and then she'd smile like I had passed some test. She taught me to make biscuits from scratch. She let me read in her bed on Saturday mornings when I was small. When everyone else in the family treated me like the background noise, Frances paid attention. She left me the house. Not my brother Kevin, not my mother, me. The house was on Delwood Avenue, a white craftsman bungalow with a covered porch and a yard that needed work but had potential. It appraised at $340,000. I'd been renting it out since she died, using the income to pay down my student loans, with a plan to move in eventually when I was ready to settle somewhere permanent. The tenant, a retired school teacher named Mr. Permanent. Aldrich paid on time every single month without exception. He left a poinsettia on the porch every December. I thought everything was fine. The first sign that something was wrong came on a Tuesday in March. I was at work reviewing a closing document for one of our attorneys when my phone buzzed with a notification from my bank. A wire transfer inquiry. Someone had initiated a request to verify the ownership status of a property linked to my name. I didn't think much of it. Sometimes mortgage companies do routine checks. I made a note to follow up and went back to the document in front of me. The second sign came 4 days later. My mother called, which was unusual. We were not close. We spoke maybe once a month. Brief, careful conversations that felt like diplomatic negotiations between two countries that had once been at war. She called to ask if I was still holding on to that house. I told her yes. She said Kevin was going through a hard time. His contracting business had failed. He owed money. She said it in the particular way she always had, not asking, exactly, but loading the sentence so heavily that a refusal would require explaining yourself. I said I was sorry to hear that, but the house was my retirement plan. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Frances would have wanted the family to look after each other. I said, Frances left the house to me. She hung up. I should have known then. I've helped clients identify the exact moment when they should have known, and it is always a phone call like that one. A question that isn't really a question, a reference to what a dead person would have wanted. I didn't act on it. I went home and made dinner and watched television and told myself it was just my mother being my mother. 3 weeks later, Mr. Aldrich called me. He sounded confused, almost apologetic. He said a man had come to the door and told him the property had been sold and he would need to vacate within 60 days. The man had given him paperwork. Mr. Aldrich had a copy. He read me the name on the transfer deed. Kevin Thomas Marsh, my brother. I sat down on my kitchen floor. I did not mean to. My legs just stopped working and the floor was there. I had been a paralegal for 7 years. I knew exactly what that meant. Someone had filed a quitclaim deed transferring the property from my name to Kevin's. For that to happen, either I had signed it, which I had not, or someone had signed it for me. I pulled myself up. I went to my laptop, I pulled the county recorder's database and searched the property address. The transfer had been recorded 11 days earlier. The notarized signature on the deed read, Audrey Christine Marsh. I had not signed anything. I sat with that for a long time. I want to be honest about this part because I think people expect that when something like this happens, you immediately go into action mode. You don't. You sit there and you cycle through every possible explanation that isn't the one you already know is true. You think maybe there was a clerical error. Maybe a form got mixed up somewhere. Maybe there is a version of this that doesn't mean your family committed fraud against you. There wasn't. I called my mother the next morning. I told her what I had found. I kept my voice even. 7 years of sitting in depositions will do that for you. You learn to present facts without telegraphing emotion because emotion gives people something to push against. She didn't deny it immediately. There was a pause, about 3 seconds, and then she said Kevin had needed to move quickly because of his debt situation, and that she had handled the paperwork to help him, and that she had fully intended to discuss it with me, but hadn't found the right time. You forged my signature, I said. I signed a form, she said. You were being unreasonable about the whole thing. Mom, you signed my name on a legal document without my consent. That is forgery. That is deed fraud. You're going to make this into some kind of legal drama, she said. And her voice shifted into the tone I had heard my entire childhood. The one that communicated that I was being difficult, that I was making things harder than they needed to be, that I was, once again, the problem. Kevin is your brother. Francis's house should stay in the family. I am family, I said. She didn't respond to that. She said she hoped I would calm down and think about what really mattered. Then she said Kevin's wife was pregnant, as if that were a reason. As if a grandchild in the picture changed what she had done. I hung up. I called my supervising attorney, Donna, from my car in the parking garage. She had been practicing real estate law for 22 years. I told her everything. I heard her exhale slowly. She said, Audrey, you know what this is. I said, I know. She said, what do you need from me? That was the moment I decided to stop looking for the version of events that let my family off the hook. I went back inside and pulled the deed filing myself. The notarization was stamped by a notary whose name I didn't recognize. Lynn Kovacs, out of a UPS store in a suburb I had no connection to. Notaries are supposed to verify identity in person. They are not supposed to notarize signatures they did not witness. If Lynn Kovacs had notarized my signature without me present, she had violated her commission. I documented everything. Date of recording, document number, notary name and commission number, the wire inquiry from 3 weeks before. I printed copies and put them in a folder. Then I drove to the Franklin County Recorder's office. The clerk was a tired-looking man in his 50s who had clearly seen people come in upset before. I told him calmly that a deed had been recorded under my name that I had not signed and that I was requesting copies of the original filing for purposes of a fraud complaint. He didn't ask questions. He printed the documents and stamped them for me. I went to the Columbus Division of Police and filed a report. The officer who took my statement was thorough. He asked good questions. When I explained that I was a paralegal and had already pulled the county records, he nodded like this made his job easier. He said the complaint would go to the Financial Crimes Unit. I texted my brother after I left the station. Short, factual. I know what happened with the deed. I have filed a police report and a complaint with the county recorder. I would strongly suggest you get an attorney. He called me within 4 minutes. He was not apologetic. He was angry, loud and incredulous, like I had done something to him. He said Mom had told him I had agreed to the transfer. He said he had no idea there was anything improper about the paperwork. He said I was tearing the family apart over a piece of property. Kevin, I said. Did you or did you not know that deed had my forged signature on it? Silence. Did Mom tell you she had signed my name? I said. More silence. Then quietly, she said she had power of attorney. She did not have power of attorney. I had never given anyone power of attorney. My mother knew that. She had told my brother a lie that gave him plausible cover, and in doing so she had put him directly in the path of a fraud investigation. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Get a lawyer, I said again, and hung up. What happened over the next 6 weeks was not dramatic in the way I think people expect. It was paperwork. It was phone calls. It was sitting across from a detective named Calloway in a small room and walking him through a timeline I had color-coded in a spreadsheet. It was filing a complaint with the Ohio Notary Commission about Lynn Kovacs. It was hiring a real estate attorney, a woman named Priya, who had a calm, precise way of speaking that I found deeply reassuring, to initiate a quiet title action to have the fraudulent deed voided. My mother called twice during this period. The first time, she said she wanted to clear the air. She said Kevin was devastated and his pregnant wife was stressed, and that I was causing harm to an unborn child by pursuing this. I listened to this and felt something very still and very cold settle in my chest. "Mom," I said, "you committed fraud. That has consequences. The consequences are not my fault." The second call was different. She was crying. She said she had always tried to do what was best for the whole family. She said I had been handed something that the rest of them hadn't, and that Francis had never been fair. She said the house should have gone to Kevin because Kevin had a family to support. I thought about Francis pressing her palm to my cheek, her serious one. "Francis decided who got the house," I said. "She decided it was me. You didn't agree with her decision, so you committed a crime. Those are two separate things, and I'm only responsible for one of them." She cried harder. I let her. Then I said, "I love you, but I'm not dropping this." I hung up. Priya filed the quiet title action. Because the deed was fraudulent and I had a police report, the title company that had originally insured the property when Francis bought it in 1987 got involved. And title companies have their own investigators and their own attorneys, and they do not like fraud. They moved fast. The notary, Lynn Kovacs, when contacted by the county commission, admitted she had notarized the signature remotely over a video call, which is not legal in Ohio without specific remote notarization certification, which she did not have. She said she had been paid $200 by a woman who called herself Sandra Marsh. My mother's name is Sandra Marsh. Kevin, facing a potential fraud charge as well as a civil action, hired an attorney who negotiated his cooperation. He provided a written statement confirming that our mother had told him she had the authority to execute the transfer and that he had not known the signature was forged. Whether that was entirely true, I didn't know. But it was enough. My mother was charged with deed fraud and forgery. Both are felonies in Ohio. She was arraigned on a Thursday morning. I did not go. I sat in my car in the parking lot of a Panera 3 miles away and ate a bowl of soup and stared at my phone and felt something I could not immediately name. It took me a while to figure out what it was. It was grief, not for the situation, for the version of my mother I had spent 31 years hoping existed. The one who saw me, who was proud of me, who would never look at something Francis left me and see only a resource to be moved around. That version had never existed. I was grieving a fiction. The quiet title action was granted. The fraudulent deed was voided. The property reverted to my name. Mr. Aldrich, who had, to his enormous credit, refused to vacate and had been wonderful throughout, got a handwritten note of apology and a 2-month rent reduction. Kevin and I have not spoken since. His wife sent me a message through Instagram, a long message that cycled between accusation and apology so many times I lost count. I read it once and then archived it. She had a daughter in July, I heard through a cousin. My mother pled guilty to a reduced charge, misdemeanor falsification, as part of a plea deal. She received 2 years of probation and a fine. Her attorney was very good at his job. I was not involved in the plea negotiation. That was between the prosecutor and the criminal courts. I moved into the house on Delwood Avenue in September. The porch needed repainting. The backyard had gotten overgrown over the summer. I bought a second-hand rocking chair at an estate sale and put it on the porch, and on the first Saturday morning after I moved in, I sat in it with coffee and watched the neighborhood come awake. A man walking a golden retriever, a woman in scrubs heading to her car. 2 kids on bikes, and I thought about Frances. She knew what she was doing when she left it to me. She knew what the house would mean. Not just the money, not just the shelter, the proof. That someone had looked at me and decided I was worth something permanent. I have a colleague, a newer paralegal named Beth, who went through something similar with her family last year. Different details, same shape. She asked me recently how I had gotten through it without losing my mind. I told her, document everything. Know the law or know someone who does. And understand that the moment you stop waiting for the people who hurt you to apologize and start protecting yourself instead, something shifts. It doesn't stop hurting, but you stop being stuck. She asked if I ever talked to my mother anymore. I said not right now. I said maybe someday if there was ever anything real to say. I said some debts don't get forgiven just because they're family debts. They just change shape. Frances's biscuit recipe is taped inside the cabinet above the stove. I make them on Sunday mornings. The kitchen still smells the way it did when I was small. A little like lemon, a little like old wood, a little like something I don't have a word for but have always recognized as home. I am not okay yet, but I am in the right house. I have thought a lot about what made this possible. Not the fraud itself. The mechanics of that are straightforward, and I understand them better than most people ever will. I mean what made it possible for my mother to look at something my grandmother built over a lifetime, something Frances chose to leave to me specifically, and decide that her judgment superseded a dead woman's written wishes. The answer, I think, is that she had been getting away with smaller versions of this my entire life. Not crimes, just the daily accumulation of decisions made on my behalf without my consent, justified by the belief that she knew better, that the family's collective need outweighed my individual one, that I, because I was capable, because I was quiet, because I did not make scenes, could absorb whatever was taken from me and keep going. Every time I absorbed it, I confirmed her theory. Every time I didn't fight back, I made the next thing easier. That is not a judgment of myself. I was doing what people do when they love someone and want to preserve the relationship. But there is a cost to that, and eventually the bill comes. What I kept returning to, during those 6 weeks of paperwork and detective meetings and sleepless nights, was the notary. Lynn Kovacs, in a UPS store, notarizing a signature over a video call for $200. She had a legal commission, she had taken an oath, and she traded it for $200 because someone asked her to, and it seemed like a small thing. I think about that a lot. How many people in this story made a choice that seemed small in the moment? My mother signing my name, Kevin not asking enough questions, Lynn pressing her stamp down on a document she had no business certifying. None of them thought they were doing something catastrophic. That is usually how catastrophic things happen. What stopped it was documentation. Cold, boring, unglamorous documentation. The bank notification I almost ignored. The county recorder's database I knew how to search because of my job. The color-coded spreadsheet. The folder of printed records I carried into a police station on a Tuesday afternoon. Intelligence. Real intelligence. Not cleverness, but the kind that comes from learning your field thoroughly and taking it seriously, is what gave me the tools to fight back. Not anger, not luck, competence. And then there is the part that was hardest, deciding that I was worth protecting, even at a cost I didn't want to pay. Because protecting myself meant watching my mother get charged with a felony. It meant losing my brother, probably permanently. It meant sitting in a Panera parking lot on the morning of her arraignment, eating soup alone, grieving something that had never actually existed. That takes a different kind of strength than the legal kind. It is the kind that doesn't look like strength from the outside at all. It just looks like a woman eating soup by herself. I did not do this to punish my mother. I did it because Frances left me that house on purpose, and what Frances decided deserved to stand. And because somewhere down the line, my mother's $200 notary and my brother's willful incuriosity would have cost someone else something too, if no one had said, "This stops here." That is what I know now. You do not have to be cruel to hold a line. You do not have to hate someone to refuse to be their casualty. The most ethical thing I did in this entire situation was also the most painful. I told the truth about what happened and let the consequences follow. That is not a small thing. Most people, given the choice between truth and peace, will choose peace every time. I chose truth. The peace came later. It came slower, but it came.